A very Merry Christmas to you all. I'm Cameron Walker, GB News' royal correspondent. If you were to ask me, in March or April time, when royal health battles were rife, if any members of the family would be able to travel this year, I would have said very unlikely. But despite the odds, the King was determined, and so was the Prince of Wales. Even Harry and Meghan carried out a couple of their own separate tours, although that certainly raised some eyebrows. So welcome to A Royal Year, the Royal Tours. Coming up, we'll be looking back on the King and Queen's tour of Australia with a member of the Australian Monarchist League who had a very special task during the visit.
What happens over the next 5 years, especially in relation to stopping the illegal wildlife trade, is crucial for the future of life on Earth.
And as Prince William takes his fight against poachers to the next level, we'll look back on GB News' exclusive interview with Robert Irwin, the son of the crocodile hunter.
This seal, there's a little seal that's coming down here and is hijacking our interview. This is amazing. Welcome to South Africa.
And as Prince Harry and Meghan travel to Nigeria and Colombia, we'll be asking one Hollywood insider, what's their endgame? Welcome back to A Royal Year, the Royal Tours. Joining me throughout today's show is someone like me who follows the King and Queen to Australia and Samoa and Prince William to Cape Town. And we welcome the Royal Editor of The Sun newspaper, Matt Wilkinson. Matt, welcome.
Thank you.
Have you recovered from your jet lag?
Oh, do you know what? It was so much worse on the way back. So on the way there, you were the adrenaline kept you going because you had the excitement of the jobs. But yeah, on the way back was tough.
And unfortunately, we couldn't go to a nice health spa in India to recover either, could we?
Oh, I did. Did you not?
No, I didn't.
Oh, I popped by one on the way back. Yeah. Oh, you should have given me a ring. I'd tell you the best ones.
Next time. You've been on kind of many royal tours covering the royal family. This year was quite different because of all the health problems we've had with the royal family, right?
100%. I mean, this was probably his most significant tour, definitely since he's become king, but I think his most significant tour for about 10 years. He had to go to Australia. He vowed to go to Australia, and it was incredibly important because, this is our most important realm, basically. He had to go and make it a success, and I'm glad it was a success because we were worried. He does have health problems, as you rightly said. He has been suffering with cancer. He has been having treatment. So it had to be a success. And I'm so glad that it went, mainly without any major kind of disaster.
Mainly. And hold that thought, because we'll be talking a lot more about the King's tour to Australia and Samoa. Lots of different things to expect throughout the show. But quickly, here is a look back at the King and Queen and Prince William's autumn travels. The royal family was propelled onto the global stage this year, representing brand Britain and deploying their soft power despite their private health battles. The King and Queen travelled thousands of miles to Australia, the first time His Majesty had visited as the country's head of state and the first reigning king to step foot on its soil.
Welcome to Australia. Lovely to have you here.
Partly due to the King's cancer diagnosis, the trip lasted only 6 days, visiting Sydney and Canberra. Hailed by crowds, but heckled by individuals. Meanwhile, the King made a point of acknowledging the traditions and lives of Indigenous communities and spent time listening to their experiences. Republican protesters were kept well back by police when their Majesties visited the Sydney Opera House. An estimated crowd of well-wishers exceeded 10,000 people. Then their Majesties travelled more than 4,000 miles into the middle of the South Pacific to visit Samoa, first for a short state visit, followed by the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, the first time King Charles had presided over the conference as its head.
Since this is the first occasion on which I find myself attending this gathering of our family of nations as head of the Commonwealth, it gives my wife and myself enormous pleasure and pride to be with you for this 27th Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting.
I have hope and I have that optimism that these guys and girls can change our future.
Meanwhile, the Prince of Wales flew to Cape Town for his 4th annual Earthshot Prize, designed to find solutions to repair the planet in this critical decade. The first time the prize was held on the African continent, Prince William was keen to spotlight African innovation and young people.
When's your next match?
Royal sources have confirmed the King will resume a more normal-looking programme of international travel next year. The Prince of Wales hopes he and the Princess of Wales will carry out more international travel too. Both households, however, are keeping tight-lipped about the destinations. Well, Matt Wilkinson, Royal Editor of The Sun, is still with me. Matt, it was particularly significant, the King's tour to Australia, because it was the first time he'd visited as head of state, right? And what was your impression of the Australian people towards their king?
Well, I was a little bit nervous at the beginning because there had been lots of, talk about maybe Republican protests or people maybe not backing or supporting the King. But I was pleasantly surprised by the reception that he received. I was very disappointed that some of the politicians didn't want to meet the King. I think some of the senators or some of the state leaders decided they didn't want to go see him. But overwhelmingly, the amount of people that I spoke to that actually came out to see the King, they kind of said, these politicians aren't speaking for us. We want to come out and support the British royal family. We're glad that the King has made the effort to travel all this way, despite, his counter-treatment, to come and see us. And I was really kind of buoyed and supported by, on the ground, the people that we met that had queued up outside to shake the hands. It was overwhelmingly supportive and positive.
And there literally was thousands and thousands of people at each of these public engagements. So that was the majority. But of course, there was a bit of a minority as well. Most notably, when you were we were both at the Australian Parliament in Canberra, but you were actually in the room when Lidia Thorpe, the senator, had her outburst. What was your initial impression?
Well, my initial impression was, I'd actually been on a job earlier where the King had been walking around meeting lots of members of the public and everyone had been overwhelmingly supportive, and an alpaca had sneezed on the King. Alpaca had sneezed on the King. And so I was writing that up in the corner of the Parliament, and all of a sudden I heard someone shouting and yelling, and I thought, there's a protester who's broken in. So obviously got up, had a little look, and she was, shouting, yelling, all sorts of stuff. So we obviously see the footage and hear her voice. And everyone around me, all the Australians, just groaned and went, it's Lidia Thorpe. Because she's the kind of person who does those kind of stunts. Interestingly, the following day, I went to a job. It was a really lovely, warm engagement where the King met lots of people from the Indigenous community, and he hugged people, he shook hands, and it was such a warm engagement. I spoke to a lot of people after that, and they said, we didn't like the way that she acted, but we do support what she said. And I think it was the actions of Lidia Thorpe, the way that she, it was a bit uncouth, the way she kind of acted. I think that was the problem.
Absolutely, but there was lots of highlights of Australia, and we do have some new footage for you now, because one of my favourite engagements actually was covering the King and Queen's trip to the community barbecue in Western Sydney, and the event brought together different communities from across New South Wales, and in, as I said, never before seen footage, I spoke to those showing the King and Queen how to flip a few snags, or sausages, and a local farmer who put on a sheepdog demo. First of all, just tell me where you guys are from. Black Bear Barbecue?
Black Bear Barbecue, yep.
Nice. What's your name?
Chop.
Chop.
Ben.
And tell me about Black Bear Barbecue, first of all.
We're a low and slow barbecue joint in Blacktown. We cook brisket, pork belly. What else, Ben? We do beef ribs,
burgers, ribs.
Yeah, some lamb occasionally. I do love some lamb.
So pretty much anything. We've got the most amazing weather for this, right?
Perfect day for this. Absolutely perfect day for a barbecue.
So what are you hoping the King is going to see and do here with your barbecue?
Hoping he's going to enjoy tasting these sausages cooked on a beautiful grill in this beautiful weather.
Yeah.
Hope he has a great day.
And you got a beer as well?
Oh, I wish. No, just a nice can of water here, born dry.
I'm joined now by Murray Wilkinson, who has a couple of very well-behaved dogs. Well, let's just come around and you can introduce us to this little dog here. What's his name or her name?
So this one's Meg. She's a border collie. Yeah, so she's about a 6-year-old female border collie. So she's one of my main dogs out on the farm there.
What demonstration is the King going to be seeing?
So he'll come in and the dogs will be on the barrels. I'll call one of the dogs off the drum and I'll send it up. I'll get it going left and right around the sheep. Then I'll bring the sheep down in between one of the dogs sitting on the drums and the King and load the sheep into the race here. Then I'll get the dog to jump up and run over the backs of the sheep. I'll get him to stop standing on top of the sheep and bark, make a little bit of noise, and then we'll unload the sheep.
Well, joining me now is Alexander Voltz from the Australian Monarchist League to speak to me about how he thought the King and Queen's tour to Australia went. Alexander, thank you so much for joining me. First of all, just how important was King Charles's visit to Australia from your perspective?
particularly important. It was the first trip of any Australian a king, and we were very pleased to have His Majesty here. He was well received by thousands and thousands of Australians in person and millions of Australians online as well. So it was a great trip, very successful, and we can't wait for the king to come back again soon.
And what was your favourite engagement of the King and Queen's visits to Australia?
I think for me it was the St. Thomas service. And the reason for that was it was the first event, and that, as far as sort of we were thinking, that was going to set the tone for the whole tour. And it was just fantastic to see so many people so happy to see the king when he left the service and when he arrived as well. And that really set a healthy tone for the whole trip. So we were very happy with that. I loved it.
And a vast majority of people were there to welcome him, but there were one or two protesters, weren't there? Most notably, of course, Lidia Thorpe inside the Australian Parliament in Canberra. What was your reaction to that when it happened? And I believe she's been censored by Australian lawmakers now.
Well, we couldn't really believe that it occurred because it's such an uncivil thing to do for any person who's got any variety of beliefs. We probably think on the whole that Lidia Thorpe didn't really achieve the objectives of her protest. She didn't destabilise the King's tour in any way. If anything, she really just tried to make a mockery of the Australian Parliament, and I think that resonated more around the world than any contention that she had. Look, she has been censured, and that has its own sort of political connotations, but she still sits in Parliament, and the Australian Monarchist League is sort of navigating about what exactly do we do with an Australian senator who's seemingly so opposed to the institution that she takes a wage from. So we're managing that one. There are a few sort of micro instances, as you say, of protests and certain things that certain people did. So we're trying to explore our legal options there still. But being censored by the Senate is good.
And when you say you're exploring legal options, does that mean that the Australian Monarchist League could well take action against Lidia Thorpe?
Oh, I certainly wouldn't commit to anything like that on air, but we just want to make sure that the Australian Constitution is protected and defended. Politicians have to play by the rules. The rules are very good. I mean, the Australian Constitution is a well-written document that sets out the rules of the game very clearly. And if Lidia Thorpe or others don't like the rules of the game, then they shouldn't necessarily be coming in and trying to change them. It's just the case that we have a parliamentary system in Australia that needs to keep on doing the good work that it is doing. And it's the same in the UK.
And on the whole, what do you think King Charles's visit did for support of the monarchy in Australia?
It certainly seemed to be that support for the monarchy was reaffirmed by the trip. It's a different kind of support to the support that was alive during the reign of the late Queen. It's now a sort of pragmatic support. I think a lot of people, they consider what it means to have the monarchy, and then the next thing that comes into their mind is, well, what would we have if we got rid of this? And there's not so many good alternatives. At least that seems to be what the Australian people are quickly realising.
Alexander, thank you very much for joining me, spokesperson there for the Australian Monarchist League. A very Merry Christmas to you.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Coming up, we'll be looking back on Prince William's trip to Cape Town, South Africa for his Earthshot Prize, where he opened up about his brutal year. Welcome back to A Royal Year, the Royal Tours. Now, in November, the Prince of Wales visited Cape Town for his 4th annual Earthshot Prize, finding and scaling up solutions to repair the planet in this critical decade. As well as championing African innovation, the Prince chose to focus on the passions of young people. Now, Robert Irwin, who's the son of the late Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter, spoke to me in Cape Town for an exclusive interview. So Robert, thank you so much for joining us here on GB News in this beautiful Cog Bay in South Africa. Just explain to me what you've been doing here this morning.
This is an incredible place, Cog Bay. I mean, what a gorgeous backdrop. I've spent the morning with the team at Abelobi, a really amazing organisation that are leading the charge in oceanic conservation here and looking at creating more sustainable fishing in this area, but doing so in a way that is actually benefiting the fishers.
And young people, one of their biggest issues is climate change, and what worries them is the threat to our natural world. And the Earthshot Prize, of course, has the power potentially to turn that pessimism into optimism. What do you think of that?
I think what makes Earthshot Prize different is the fact that it leads with positivity, and we need that. We're all concerned, we all know that there's big issues, but sometimes it feels like it's too big. It's just simply too big for, how can I, the one person, how can I take this on? And when you hear the doom and the gloom and the big issues, it's easy to sort of bury your head in the sand. So Earthshot Prize says, yes, there's big issues facing the world, absolutely, but have a look at the people who are leading the charge, creating innovation, and getting the work done.
So how does it feel becoming an Earthshot Prize ambassador for this year?
It is such an honour to be an Earthshot Prize Global Ambassador. I feel as though this is really conservation on the grandest scale. My life has been devoted to making the world a better place, to stand up for those who don't have a voice, our world wildlife. And so to be part of this is just the honour of a lifetime. You know, look, I just love this where we're standing.
Wow.
Look at this seal. There's a little seal
incredible.
that's coming down here and is hijacking our interview. This is amazing.
But
welcome to South Africa.
We've got nature here, right?
It's glorious. But I mean, that's my point. I'm so glad that throughout my childhood, I've grown up visiting so many different places and continents and countries and seeing firsthand, you know, conservation on the front line. And it gives you a sense of urgency, a sense of perspective. And when Earthshot Prize approached me to be part of this amazing movement, I just jumped at the chance. Everything that I do is about continuing a legacy that my dad started. And he started that when he was a young fella, way younger than me. He was only like 8, 9 years old. He had a passion for rescuing snakes that were hit by cars on the side of the road. And he turned that into a global wildlife conservation empire and really inspired an entire generation.
And both you and Prince William have a huge social media following, and Prince William, of course, Earthshot is his baby. And how important is his convening power, his global fame in spreading this kind of message?
I think when you think of the Earthshot Prize, instantly you think of Prince William. His devotion and his dedication to conservation is unparalleled. It is absolutely amazing. And it's so encouraging to see someone, of course, with a brilliant platform, that's using that platform 100% to create positive change for our environment. As a wildlife conservationist, that just makes me so incredibly happy. And to be part of that is wonderful. And I'm just really, really honoured to join forces with him and this amazing Earthshot family.
Particularly with the seal who keeps
keeps coming in, who keeps talking. He wants to be heard.
He certainly does. What do you think your father would think of the Earthshot Prize?
Oh, crikey, he'd say, you know. I think he would be in awe of the Earthshot Prize. He was talking about climate change and pollution and habitat degradation and often very controversial environmental topics before they were so mainstream. I mean, he was known as the crocodile hunter. He'd go out and rescue crocodiles, an animal that was really hated and feared in Australia for a long time, and he made them cool, you know. So he was all for really tackling big issues, talking about the things that we really need to discuss. And, you know, Earthshot, on this brilliant global scale that it has, he would be very, very excited. I'm sure he'd be in Cape Town. He'd be out there wrangling all the cobras and just, oh man, you wouldn't stop him, 100%. But, you know, if I can continue his passion and his legacy, you know, he always said, I don't care if people remember me. I just care that they remember my message, and I will fight till the day I die to make sure that his message lives on forever.
Absolutely, and Earthshot, a 10-year plan. Do you think that do you hope that Australia will be one of the hosts?
I am definitely cheering for Australia to host one of the Earthshot Prize Awards, 100%. So Let's make that happen.
Let's Prince William, if you're watching this, make it happen, please.
We got to do it.
Robert, thank you so much for speaking to me.
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
A real pleasure.
Cheers.
Thanks heaps.
Now, a few days after we shot that interview with Robert, we returned to Cog Bay with Prince William, where he came face to face with one or two hecklers.
Tell your father to make right what he did here in this country. Go tell your father to fix up your grandmother's mess.
Yeah, feelings running high there. Well, you may have spotted Matt Wilkinson, the editor, royal editor of The Sun, in the background of that video. I mean, it was a bit unexpected, but to me it wasn't that planned. It seemed quite spontaneous, or two protesters had come to the Bay and then others kind of joined in.
Yeah, like you, I tried to speak to some of the protesters and it didn't make a massive lot of sense to me. I didn't really particularly understand the point they were trying to make. I mean, William was there bringing, great attention on some great local issues. He'd come to South Africa for this Earthshot Prize. It was all about, helping save the planet. And I didn't quite get the message that these people were trying to come across. It seemed to attract some people who wanted to shout abuse at William. But there was quite interesting. There was a couple of local fishermen there, and they were quite angry that this whole engagement had been set on the harbour. And I think that was a bit of a misstep for the palace. I don't think they'd engaged properly with some of the local communities. But look, any old protester can turn up and shout something at a member of the royal family. It doesn't indicate there's some kind of massive groundswell of opinion, in my view. And as I say, I tried to speak to them. I tried to make some sense of what they're saying, but I really struggled to understand their point. Yeah,
as we all did. And I think Prince William chose to ignore, understandably, and focus on what he was there for, which was Abelobi, as you say, kind of a sustainable fishing company for that area. And just talking about Prince William and his Earthshot Prize as a whole here, he chose to focus on African innovation. And I think what we saw from that really was how much he loves the continent and how much sanctuary perhaps it's brought him over the years.
Yeah, I think the important thing to say about this is the way, because it's an international, global event. It was very much focused on Africa. Like inside the show itself, it was like a massive African party. There was music, there was noise. It was really good fun, and it wasn't. I've been to the ones in elsewhere in Boston and in the UK and Singapore. This was very Africa focused, very focused on young people as well. It was all about getting young entrepreneurs. They brought in some people from across Africa and Asia, some young people in their teens and early 20s, to get them encouraged as well. And so that's what I think it was. It was about reaching out to communities and getting to young people in Africa. And you're right, it's somewhere that is very, very important to his life. He proposed to the future Princess of Wales when he was in Africa. I think he said that the Earthshot was coming home, because that's where he dreamt up the idea several years ago when he was in Africa, and he realised the kind of potential of a prize like that. So I actually think genuinely it's a very positive couple of days that William spent in Cape Town.
And I think we really saw the passion for his Earthshot Prize come through, the Environmental Prize, 10 years to find solutions to repair the planet. But he did also open up, didn't he, to members of us, the media, talking about how brutal a year it had been. But it was in huge contrast to the kind of mood I thought he was in Cape Town.
No, you're right. I thought he was light-footed. He seemed positive. He seemed relaxed, which is great. I didn't think he looked that relaxed earlier in the year. He looked very very stressed, understandably, for everything that was happening to his wife. But I was quite relieved to see him that way. Acting positive, say light-footed. He was happy. But the conversation that we had with him, like there was like a press pool where we could put some questions to him. We wanted to know what William was thinking, because we've heard about the King, we've heard Camilla talk about the King, we've heard Princess of Wales twice in a video. We wanted to know how William felt. And he took a deep breath and he said, "This has probably been the hardest year of my life." And it was an honest, raw moment that we haven't seen from Prince William very often. He can deliver these amazing moments and amazing quotes, but we don't ask him. He's not someone that we ask questions about as much as we do with Princess of Wales and the King this year. So I was buoyed by his comment, his honesty, and I thought it was really nice to hear from him.
And in that interview, he talked about him looking forward to 2025, perhaps more travel with the Princess, and maybe Brazil.
Yeah, he kind of let slip, didn't he? I'm not sure how much he was allowed to talk about it, but I think it will maybe be South America, we hope, because he wants to go to all the different continents.
Yes.
So we've been to Africa. Next he wants to go possibly to South America, but he did hint, didn't he? He said that myself and the Princess of Wales may be doing more trips together or separate or foreign trips in the future. Again, which is it really just indicative of his positive outlook at the end of the year and, looking towards, some future trips in the new year.
We'll watch this space and, of course, we'll be covering it all. Still to come, we'll be getting the lowdown on Prince Harry and Meghan's travels, which some have dubbed quasi-royal tours. Stay tuned. Welcome back to a royal year, the royal tours. Now, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, aka Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, undertook 2 high-profile international visits to Nigeria and Colombia this year. And in Nigeria, Harry met injured service personnel and Meghan co-hosted a Women in Leadership event. In Colombia, the couple highlighted how social media and the internet can harm children, but both tours were not without controversy. And royal podcaster Kinsey Schofield, who's based in Los Angeles, joins me now. Kinsey, thank you for joining me and a Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas.
Now, first of all, Harry and Meghan went on what some are dubbing as quasi-royal tours. They went to Nigeria in Africa, a 3-day visit focused on sports rehabilitation, mental health and women's empowerment. But what was your takeaway of that particular tour?
Well, I think I have a PR background, and I truly feel like looking at the royal tours, that Harry and Meghan's ultimate objective is to keep one foot in the royal, in the royal sphere. They want to continue to look like royals, despite the fact that they really don't have that relationship with the family anymore. And I think the objective for Prince Harry is because he sincerely enjoys that work and he feels that he excels in that arena. And when it comes to Meghan, I feel like we see it in the American Riviera Orchard logo. I am almost certain that here in the United States and in Hollywood, they have a team of people that have set them down and said, your titles and your association with the royal family are incredibly important to you. Is it our fault that we walked away from both royal tours not really understanding? And I mean, you're definitely not as bad as I am, because you just gave me a full list of what they were trying to spotlight. But at the time, what we were talking about was what Meghan was wearing. We were talking about how they engaged with people. It wasn't necessarily about the causes that they were there to champion or that they were there to further. And I don't know if that's the media's fault or if that's somebody on their team's fault that isn't pushing that hard enough. But looking at what they've done with these quasi-royal tours over 2024, it really looks like the hook is 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
One of the distractions potentially in Colombia was the security aspects of the tour, because parts of Colombia, both the British Foreign Office and the US equivalent, say parts of the country are unsafe for British or US citizens to go there. Now, granted, Harry and Meghan did not go to those particular areas, but some are drawing this comparison, Kinsey, aren't they, between the fact that Prince Harry refuses to bring his wife Meghan to the United Kingdom because he feels she's unsafe there, but is happy for her to go to Colombia, where parts of the country are unsafe for any British citizen to go there?
I mean, there are a lot of moments where you sit back and say, this isn't adding up. Harry and Meghan in Colombia did catch a lot of us off guard, because Prince Harry had just sat down with, I believe, Tabloids on Trial, the documentary, saying that he was too fearful to bring his wife back to the UK. He was afraid X, Y, and Z would happen, and laid out some very extreme examples of things he feared would happen when he set foot with Meghan in the UK. You and I believe, are on the same page in feeling like Prince Harry would be very well protected in the UK. It does feel a little hypocritical, obviously. There's also the idea of these diplomatic issues associated with these royal tours. I mean, overseas visits, they look beautiful, especially when you're looking at Catherine, what is Catherine wearing? And look at how she just looks so joyful and engaging with people. But they're actually a matter of foreign policy. And you look at these two individuals and you think, what are they doing? Are they going to get someone in trouble because they're not promoting the UK? They're not promoting the USA. And these typically are to build diplomatic and trade alliances on behalf of a government. So truly, what are they doing? It seems like they have different priorities. When I don't know, with Colombia, I can't remember the exact number, but it was record setting when it came to the amount that they spent to secure Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. And when you look at that number, you do feel like these, obviously, to invest so much in a poor country to protect these two individuals, I know that they love it because they do look like really important figures to throw down such a significant amount of money for protection.
And arguably one of Prince Harry's biggest achievements is the Invictus Games. And we touched on the heart of Invictus, the Netflix documentary there briefly, his Paralympic-style competition to rehabilitate wounded veterans. And in 2025, which we're going into very shortly, he's off to Whistler in Canada for the Invictus Games there. So is this something that Prince Harry could potentially excel in? And what would the dynamic be if Meghan also attends? Because we don't have confirmation that she is going with him yet, do we?
It is my understanding that Meghan is going to attend Whistler's Invictus Games. No confirmation yet, but I have been told that she will, which I almost think is a sigh of relief to the people that continue, like me, that continue to be asked about the status of the relationship. Because I'm just like, wait, can we just wait until the next Invictus Games? Just wait. Invictus is Prince Harry's heart. I think that it's his legacy. And I do believe that continuing to nourish the Invictus Games and to see that evolution it gives Prince Harry the credibility he needs, because they are being heavily criticized when it comes to the entertainment side of their lives.
Kinsey Schofield, royal podcaster based in LA, thank you so much for joining me, and a happy Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas. Thanks, Cameron.
Coming up, we'll be taking a look back on the King and Queen's trip to Samoa with a royal photographer granted up-close access to their majesties. Welcome back to a royal year, the royal tours. And after their visit to Australia, the King and Queen travelled to Samoa in the South Pacific for a state visit and the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. And it was the first time that King Charles had presided over that meeting as its head, and their majesties were immersed in the culture of the island nation. Well, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by royal photographer Zak Hussein, who accompanied their majesties to Samoa and has brought some of his favourite pictures in to show us. Zak, welcome. We are also joined by, again, sorry, that sounded really dodgy, didn't it? We are joined still, delighted to be joined still by Matt Wilkinson, the royal editor of The Sun too. And I think we've just about all recovered from the humidity, because it was quite hot, Zak, wasn't it?
Incredibly hot, incredibly humid. Very different from the UK, where I just got off a plane from. So, yeah, it took a bit of getting used to.
Yeah. Was Samoa different in any way from your experience, your perspective?
The thing that I think stood out more than anything to me was it was less formal, very much less formal. I didn't wear a tie the whole way through the tour, and normally a tie is something that's essential, a suit and tie. So, and the King very rarely wore a tie for his own engagement. So that was the thing that stood out to me.
Yeah, he had his own unique tunic, didn't he, Matt? And I don't think any of us wore ties throughout the visit.
No, and all the staff were wearing kind of locally designed shirts as well, short-sleeve shirts, weren't they? All the royal staff would normally be wearing, ties as well. But, they had a more relaxed atmosphere. And I think it's because of the success of the Australia trip. There was almost like a deep breath. They went, we've succeeded in Australia. It's gone well. We can relax here in Samoa, and it was great. But yeah, the tunic that the King had, I almost gasped when he arrived the first day. So, what is he wearing? Do I like it? I do like that, actually. That's quite cool. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, even Sir Clive Alderson, I think, at one point was wearing not a shirt and tie, which was a miracle. Yes, Zak, the rain was torrential, wasn't it, for some of these engagements? That must have been a nightmare trying to protect your camera as well as capturing these shots.
Yeah, I got there the day before and it was torrential. No, sorry, I woke up the morning. I got there the day before and I thought, this is great, got to the hotel and I thought, really good. I woke up the next morning. They were due to arrive that evening and it was, I've never seen rain like it. And I was, everyone was a bit panicked by that. We got word from the Navy that it was set in for a few days, so I was just like, oh God. But with equipment like that, you are worried about it. But bizarrely, the first engagement, which was the ceremonial welcome, was supposed to take place outside on a great, I think it was a rugby field. So it was going to be a huge thing. And I think everyone was a bit concerned of how we were going to photograph this and do film of it. But they moved it inside, and a lot of the engagements, they all happened. I didn't get particularly wet, believe it or not. The rain somehow stopped at the right moment.
That's good.
Apart from one particular job.
Yes, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But let's just show the picture that Zak took of that first engagement. An Ava ceremony, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's traditional ceremonial welcome for royalty and heads of state. And it was definitely the job I was looking forward to the most when I got the information about the tour. And it went on for quite some time. And this picture particularly is taken at the end of it. And you can see the lady with the crazy hair. She was the daughter of the Samoan head of state. So Charles went round and met all the sort of locals, and it was just a great start to the tour, I think. And
what's it like being up close and personal with members of the royal family, particularly the King and Queen, when you are photographing them? On
a tour like this, especially with Samoa, it was quite a relaxed atmosphere. So obviously, I'm very much focused on getting the picture that you're kind of taking a step back from what's going on in front of you and concentrating really hard on trying to get that shot. So, I mean, you don't get starstruck taking pictures when you do it all the time.
Yeah, of course. And we talk about it being less formal, Matt. We did get a sense of the traditions of Samoa, and I think the King and Queen really embraced those cultures and traditions. Drinking from, I can't remember what the drink he had to drink was, but it was a lot of that sort of thing.
Well, so much so that I lost count how many ceremonies they actually had, because on the final day, I think they had an extra one. They chucked in an extra one. I think he actually did 3 Ava ceremonies in the end, and I think he was enjoying it. But yeah, look, he has said recently that he wished he'd gone to Fiji as well. I mean, I think he likes the South Pacific, and he jumped both feet straight in.
So you don't think they were particularly enjoying that last engagements because all of us in the media, well, I wasn't there luckily, but the rest of the media got absolutely drenched on that last one?
I actually wasn't there either. Matt, were you there?
Yeah, no, I was there, and it was, honestly, we talk about torrential. This was the one that was just thrown in at the last minute. So some of us, it was a long way to travel, I think, so it's quite difficult to get there, wasn't it? And honestly, we thought it had rained the last couple of days. It just, the heavens opened. And I remember Queen Camilla had a fit of the giggles. Because, and we were thinking, people think, oh, is she laughing at the ceremony? Is there some kind of aspect that is funny to her? No, she was laughing because all the photographers and the reporters, every time the wind blew, it blew the water off the canopy of a marquee and covered everyone with water. So she was laughing at us, the poor reporters who were covered in water. Yeah.
She got her own back then, just a little bit. Matt, Zak, your goal is to capture royals from perhaps a less formal angle and try and capture their personalities. How do you kind of go about achieving that? And is there any particular moment in Samoa from either the King or Queen you remember fondly?
The whole tour just had, as I said before, this very relaxed atmosphere. So, when they're chatting to all the locals and stuff, it picture-wise, it's a dream, really, with all the colour and everything like that. In terms of how you capture these moments, you try and take a step back so you're not too much in their face, You're very much trying to allow them to carry out these engagements and try not to allow them to be too aware of the cameras.
And let's have a look at this other Ava ceremony, which we've got a picture for. Here we are. They seem very relaxed in this sort of scenario, don't they? I mean, it's completely different from a throne room in Buckingham Palace, for example. It was just a standard village hall.
Yeah. It was, again, very relaxed. Funnily enough, this was the second engagement they did. So they've gone from one Ava ceremony to another straight away. So they were obviously used to it by that point.
Yeah, and I think if we show picture number one, you can see a little bit of a sense of the torrential rain, but the King was well prepared with an umbrella. I think Canada was never far away, Matt, when it came to things for the weather elements.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, as you say, we knew that it was going to rain. But you've got to remember that the King will keep saying it, but he is having cancer treatment. He paused his cancer treatment when he was there. So there was going to be worries, that it's just the weather, but is it too cold for him? Is it too wet for him? I mean, he's a man in his 70s. As I say, he just, jumped straight, 2 feet straight in every single time. And, if he needed an umbrella, they gave him an umbrella. Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. Well, Zak, thank you so much for coming in and bringing us your photographs. Really appreciate it. And a Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas.
And Matt, just before we let you go, we're towards the end of 2024 now. Of course, 2025 around the corner. We're getting a hint from royal sources that the King plans to do a full programme of international travel next year.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to what goes on tour stays on tour, but we were there when the palace spoke to us at the end of the tour, and they were very confident about how this trip had gone in Samoa and Australia. And they told us, in the new year there will be a full programme, and that means a spring tour and an autumn tour. We know in the spring they're going to go to Italy. We don't have the exact itinerary yet, but knowing the King, it's going to be 7 or 8, 9 or 10 jobs a day. We're going to be running around all over the place. There's going to be somewhere in autumn as well, which we still don't quite know. I'm waiting to find out. There is speculation about India, Bangladesh. I believe that's on a long list. So there's a long list towards the end of the year, but I think Europe at the beginning, then I think we'll have some exotic travel in the autumn. And this bodes well because, the King, as I keep saying, is not a well man. He's struggling with cancer, he's having treatment. But it bodes well that if they can both carry out these 2 huge tours next year, then that's very positive.
Well, fingers crossed, and hopefully less jet lag for them and us as well. Matt Wilkinson, Royal Editor of The Sun, thank you for joining me. And that is all we've got time for on A Royal Year, the Royal Tours. Thank you so much for your company. Please join us on GB News next year as we report on the royal family's future travels, wherever that may be. A very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.